Hey guys, sorry I can't be with you today. Go ahead and get started on your bell work. As usual, this should take you about 5 minutes and we'll go over it together. So whoever's running the video, go ahead and hit pause for me. And you guys get that done and then you can start back up and we'll go over these. All right, looking at number 1 here on our bell work. If you were to describe the angle relationship between angles 1 and 2, those are same side interior angles. Let's try to write this here. Same side interior angles. And same side interior angles, if you remember, add up to equal 180 degrees, which means they are supplementary. So same side interior. And they equal 180 degrees. They're not congruent to each other. They add up to equal 180. All right, and then with number 2 over here, angles 1 and 2 are alternate interior angles, and alternate interior angles are congruent. So these are alternate interior angles. All right, a converse, you're going way back on that one from stuff we did towards the beginning of the year. If you remember, a converse is where you have a statement, an if-then statement, that's the conditional. And what you do is you flip your hypothesis and your conclusion. You flip your if-then around. So if you remember, like the original statement, we said stuff like, if P, then Q. Then the converse was then, if Q, then P. So it's where the hypothesis and the conclusion flip spots. So number 4, the conditional statement says if an angle is 90 degrees, then the angle is a right angle. Well, your hypothesis is an angle is 90 degrees. Your conclusion is that the angle is a right angle. If you're going to write the converse, you're going to flip that around. You're going to say if the angle is a right angle, then the angle is 90 degrees. And that is a true converse. I'm not going to write it down. It's just kind of difficult to write with the mouse pad here. So bear with me. I'll say that one more time for you. You should have written down for your converse, if an angle is a right angle, then the angle is 90 degrees. And that is true. All right, moving on. All right, today's topic, we are talking about proving lines parallel. We'll continue this on Monday as well. So your topic and your essential questions will be the same for the next couple of days. So your essential question is, how will you use a transversal in proving lines parallel? And then what is the relationship between parallel and perpendicular lines? If you will recall from before, corresponding angles were if you had 2 parallel lines that were cut by a transversal, then we knew that the corresponding angles were congruent. Now let's look at the converse of that. If 2 lines in a transversal form congruent corresponding angles, then the 2 lines are parallel. So in this case, we're starting with knowing that angle 1 is congruent to angle 5, but I don't know anything about any of these lines here. However, because of the converse of corresponding angles, if I know 1 and 5 are congruent, then I can say that line L is parallel to line M. That's what the converse does. So one more time. Before, we started by knowing that the lines were parallel and saying that the angles were congruent. Now we're saying, yep, I have corresponding congruent angles. That's cool. That must mean that line L and line M are parallel. If anyone needs to pause the videos at any time, please feel free to do so. Raise your hand and ask for it to be paused, and if not, do keep in mind that my notes will be posted online. All right, so now we're looking at alternate interior angles. Again, before we knew that the lines were parallel to begin with. Now I'm saying, okay, I have these two lines and I have a transversal. And to start out with, the alternate interior angles, oops, let's do that in blue. The alternate interior angles are congruent. So if I know that angle 2 and angle 3 are congruent to start out with, then I can say that line L is parallel to line M. So the converse of alternate interior angles basically says if angle 2 is congruent to angle 3, then L is parallel to M. We'll get there. L, it's cursive L, is parallel to line M. All right? So this time we're starting knowing that the angles are congruent. All right. Down here we're looking at same side interior angles. And if I tell you that angle 1 and angle 3 add up to equal 180, I start out there, angle 1 plus angle 3 equals 180, then you can say that because angle 1 and angle 3 are same side interior angles, then line L must be parallel to line M. So we'll just add this here. If angle 1 plus angle 3 is 180, then line L must be parallel to line M. And L is parallel to M. All right. So before we were starting out knowing that the lines are parallel, now we're starting out knowing that angles are congruent, so that must mean that the lines are parallel. So let's take a look at these. If I tell you that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, which two lines must be parallel? If angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, I have alternate interior angles. So line C must be parallel to line D, and then I say justify your answer. Well, it's the converse of alternate interior angles that lets us know that the lines are parallel. Converse of alternate interior. This is way harder than it looks. Converse of alternate interior angles. All right. Let's go to the next one here. If angle 3 and angle 4 are congruent, then which two lines must be parallel? The answer there should be that A will be parallel to B because of the converse of corresponding angles. To save us some time, I'm going to use some shorthand here. So A is parallel to B. There's line A, there's line B. I know that these guys are congruent. So A is parallel to B by the converse of corresponding angles. Probably wouldn't hurt you to write it all out, but not gonna lie, this is a challenge. Converse of corresponding angles. All right. So you've got some homework problems that'll look something like that. All right, let's move down here. I ask you to find the value of x that would make t and p parallel. So we're going to use the converse again. And if I want to say that these are parallel, I need to know that these alternate interior angles are congruent. So to solve for x, I'm going to set those equal to each other. So I'm going to say 14 plus 3x equals 5x minus 66. And we're going to solve this as normal. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. Whoa, leaves me with 14 equals 2x minus 66. Still haven't solved for x yet. So I'm going to add 66 to both sides. 66, there we go. We're adding of 2x equals 80. Divide both sides by 2. X would be 40. Okay, that one's by the converse of alternate interior angles. All right, I'm going to let you try this one on your own. Go ahead and pause the video. Give yourselves about 3 minutes to work through this one. And when you resume, I'll set it up for you and give you the answer. All right, on this one we're using the same side interior angles converse. So we're going to say 7x minus 8 plus 62 must equal 180. Combine like terms, we get 7x plus 54 equals 180. Subtract 54 from both sides. I'm left with 7x divided by 134. Let's try 136. How's that sound? Whoops. Okay. Divide both sides by 7. Ooh, does that come out nice? Oh my goodness. I didn't catch it. Hopefully you guys did. Should be 126 here. So should get 18. Might double check that. I'm doing that one in my head. But I'm 99.9% sure we get x equals 18. All right. If you need to pause at any time, feel free to do so. All right, now we're going to prove this converse. Remember, you can't use the converse to prove the converse. So we're going to use some other stuff that we know. I say always, always, always start out with your given. So So I'm always going to say, okay, angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. How do I know? Well, it was given to me. And since I numbered these, I know that my last statement is going to be that A is parallel to B, because that's what I'm trying to prove. I don't know why A is parallel to B yet, but I do know that A is parallel to B. Okay, so again, I can't say anything about these yet, and I'm proving that they're parallel, so I don't actually know this yet. But I do know that vertical angles are congruent, so I know that angle 4 and angle 3 are congruent, because the vertical angles are always congruent. Wow, vertical angles. Vertical angles. And I know this cool little property that says if 1 is congruent to 3 and 4 is congruent to 3, then angle 1 must be congruent to angle 4. And that's by the transitive property. So 1 is congruent to 3, 3 is congruent to 4. Sorry about that. Therefore, angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. And the reasoning for that is the transitive property. So finally, if I know that 1 and 4 are congruent, then those appear to be corresponding angles. So A must be parallel to B by the converse of corresponding angles. So the converse of corresponding angles. Corresponding angles. We're going to use shorthand again because otherwise we'll be here all night. Corresponding angles. All right. So that is the proof of the converse of alternate interior angles. I'll scroll back down so you can see the reasons. You need to pause. If you have questions, you might turn and ask your neighbor because maybe they picked up on something that you weren't 100% sure on. And don't forget, in your Cornell notes, over here, this stuff right here, is for you to write notes and questions as well. So if you have a question that you want to ask me when we get back, then right there would be a really good spot to put that. All right, moving on. Moving on to your homework for today. We will continue more proofs and more converses on Monday. So your homework for today is on page 124, numbers 1 through 15, and then also 17 and 19. You have the rest of the class period to work on it. I expect you to be working. You may work with one partner at your current table. Or you may work alone, it doesn't matter to me. But I do want you to go ahead and get that done, and I will check that on Monday. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Bye-bye.